This is a clip from the Red Cow Arcade podcast.
My sister was like begging me to go see the new Ghostbusters movie. I was a huge Ghostbuster kid. I think I was a Ghostbuster 3 Halloweens when I was younger, like around 5. That's when like the real Ghostbusters was at its peak and everything.
Yep.
Ghostbusters 2 just came out. I didn't even like actually the real Ghostbusters cartoon. I watched it because I was like, oh, it's more Ghostbusters, but I always felt it was like Uncanny Valley because like Egon had like blonde hair and it was, I don't know, and then Bill Murray was played by Garfield and stuff. So it was all weird.
For me, the real Ghostbusters was Ghostbusters. I didn't actually know I think the movies had aired on television once or twice, and I was like, oh, they made live action movies. Like I thought it was like Ninja Turtles, where there was an animated series, and then they made a cool like for grown-ups or for teens kind of a movie. So I didn't. Yeah, I came in backwards, which I imagine a lot of kids did because I came in through the toys, probably.
True. I was the opposite. So I had a VHS of the TV recording of the movie. So I watched that over and over and over.
I had that too, but Ghostbusters 2, it was.
Yeah, and then my parents got me a 2 like VHS set of both movies. And I watched those, and I watched the real Ghostbusters, but I kind of resented it because it was like
And that Garfield thing is funny because Bill Murray does the voice of Garfield in the live action Garfield movie.
Yeah.
So now that they have Chris Pratt doing Garfield, I'm like, you broke the combo.
And Mario.
I get why the internet's going after him for that. Everything before that, I was like, what do you get off Chris Pratt's dick? Now I'm like, yeah, let's get him.
Let's get him. Garfield and Mario.
He should have the sense to not say yes to both of those things. In such a short period of time. That it's so derpy.
Yeah. And he'll just be like his Chris Pratt voice, be like, hey, I'm Garfield.
I know what it'll sound like. It'll sound like fucking Emmett from Lego. Oh no!
I'm so confused right now.
It's basically Seth Rogen. What do you mean?
It's Seth Rogen, but like you pitch him up a little and like
they make him like a real human. Were you like me? You got the proton pack, you got the Ghostbusters trap, all the toys.
I had all of it,
yeah.
And my sister too. So we would like dress up as Ghostbusters, and we both had jumpsuits, and it was.
Did you get as a young child who loved the movies? Did you get the comedy? Did you actually like? Were you connected?
No,
to the humor?
I mean, I did. I mean, I knew it was funny, like especially Ghostbusters 2. I think I was just old enough to get the humor, and then when I went back to Ghostbusters 1, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. It's supposed to be a comedy. Yeah, but there was the adventure aspects, and the ghost busting itself was cool.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's kind of like for that franchise. This is what has both made that series succeed so much, and now is hurting it. Which is there was kind of an unexpected element, which was this branding and this action adventure element to it that like it almost has no business having, because like
it's almost incidental. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like in its DNA, the first Ghostbusters movie has more in common with Blues Brothers, let's say, or like a John Landis movie than it does, Star Wars or something franchisable or Ninja Turtles or, something huge from, some major superhero franchise or something. And so like, yeah, it obviously gave Sony in the age of mega franchising now. Sony probably is looking at its library going, what do we own? Saw Ghostbusters and said, oh, if we can't bring this back and make a million movies out of this, like who are we? But you can't, can you, EJ?
Yeah, and then when I was more of an adult-ish in the DVD era, I got Ghostbusters on DVD, and it's been like, probably at that time, it would have been like a decade since I watched it. And so then I watched it again with the DVD, watched all the features, and I was like, this is the most brilliant comedy. Like,
yeah, it's great.
It's ever. And so it was recontextualized at an older age as more purely a comedy. And
I had that experience with Back to the Future, where like I liked it as a child, and then I came back to it as like in college, and I was like, oh man, this thing was genius. Like
Yeah.
this, like the planets just aligned to make this thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, lightning in a bottle, where
Yeah.
you have a great cast that comes together. You have the best banter. You have Bill Murray, who is the just right amount of like don't give a shit, and like at his peak.
Right. It's the very thing that makes the movie what it is. Because if he's not walking around the scene with his hands in his pockets, making fun of everything,
Yeah.
then the movie is deeply nerdy and weird and completely inaccessible. The Bill Murray of it is that's what it is. And so, it's like,
because you got Dan Aykroyd probably trying to take it too seriously,
right.
and like,
well,
nothing
it's
but
almost
trouble
like
or whatever.
It starts with Dan Aykroyd being like, I've got a high concept comedy to do, and I'm crazy, and we can make this crazy thing. Then it's Harold Ramis, the filmmaker, the talented comedic filmmaker. And he's made a lot of great movies. I mean, how good is Groundhog's Day?
Oh,
dude?
yeah.
Like it's
it's like the cynical nature of it that's imbued in with it. So yeah, he takes that high concept weirdness of Dan Aykroyd, filters it through that like cynical, beautiful comedy filter of Harold Ramis.
Totally structures it. And then you give it to a really strong, kind of competent, adventure action comedy director like Ivan Reitman, who's a little bit like, he's probably part of the secret sauce too. Cause he's not strictly like a comedy guy. He's like he did Kindergarten Cop and, he did like bigger movies too. And then finally you have all that should be enough to make a great movie. And then you get like the greatest comedic mind of that era to be the main performer and the most memorable thing about the movie, who in a way is contradicting the film at every turn. Yeah. He's kind of like comedically speaking, he's like working against the movie, which makes it strong.
Yeah, it's a good push and pull, and it works works in the perfect balance. And
who's to say that any of those elements should have come together? I've heard things that it was supposed to be John Belushi instead of Bill Murray. John Belushi's a genius, but Bill Murray's the thing here. I'm sure there was lots of Eddie Murphy. Of course.
Eddie Murphy was supposed to be Winston, which I think would have taken away too much from the movie too. It would have made
Winston
it too
has to be understated.
Yeah, that's one of the things as an adult when I watched Ghostbusters is how much I appreciate Winston Zeddemore, and I like quote him more than most of the Ghostbusters now because it's just like there's a steady paycheck involved. I'll believe anything. It's great. He's just I don't know, this the working class guy, which it goes with the movie so well, like as these exterminators who are just like taking care of ghosts.
That's just not what this is. The irony of that franchise is all of those things that define it went over my head, and I wasn't enjoying any of those things as a child. I was enjoying proton packs, Slimer, the logo, some of the comedy, but honestly not much. The janitor cost, I wasn't like, oh my God, I had no point of reference for what an exterminator was and how this was a take on extermination. I just thought they were cool costumes, cool logo, cool firehouse, going down poles. That's all,
Yeah. Cool car.
Very cool car. One of the best cars ever. Yeah. And I think it's the existence of all of those things that maybe gave the studio a false sense that you could continue it without the core team, the original team. And no, that's a lot like Star Wars.
And I even liked Ghostbusters 2 a lot too, because I think I don't really care that it's basically the same movie. Because I just love to see those performers together doing their thing, and like and some of those jokes in Ghostbusters 2 are so good. Like Bill Murray as the psychic talk show host. And
I quote 2 more than I quote 1. Most people love 2. If you do love 2, because it's caught a lot of shit. I think very unfairly.
So.
But the people who like it, one of the memorable things, of course, is the NES advantage to pilot the Statue of Liberty set to "Your Love Lifting Me Higher," which is a great scene, truly great. Yeah, I love 2 as well, and I miss the days when Ghostbusters was 2 movies, and it was just this thing. And Back to the Future is still in that state. Animated series, trilogy, maybe a video game in the 2000s. That's it.
Yeah, and it'll probably stay that way until like I don't know, everyone's like dead basically, and they bring it back.
There's something Back to the Future feels bulletproof somehow. Like we will not stand for, although Ghostbusters really should have the same level of bulletproofness.
It should.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I did catch the female Ghostbusters like way later, and I thought it was like absolute trash. It was just, it's improv. It's really messy. It's like a messy movie. It's
in much the way that modern comedies tend to be.
Yeah. And I didn't enjoy like any of the characters. They also seemed like they were just like really talking over each other, and they weren't very consistent. Except for like Leslie Jones, which I surprisingly enjoyed more than the other ones, which the trailers made me think I'd think she was awful, but she was actually the most enjoyable part of that movie.
They're not untalented people. I mean, like, this is the team that did Bridesmaids. I think Bridesmaids is a really brilliant comedy, actually.
Yeah.
And they're all really funny and revelatory in it. And I actually think Kristen Wiig is like an amazing SNL performer and does have a lot of star power. I like when she shows up in things, not always, but often.
Yeah. Even like I do find is it Melissa McCarthy? Is that her name?
Yeah, no, she's funny. Well, you like her in Gilmore Girls, probably, right?
Yeah, Gilmore Girls, absolutely. And I just think, and like I liked her in Spy. I think she's pretty funny in that movie.
Oh yeah, I saw that movie.
But in this one, like she's not playing to her strengths at all. She's like I don't know, try to make her more reserved, and it just doesn't work or something. I don't even.
Yeah, everything feels real off. And there's also, this will be relevant for our discussion. Remember the Sony hack where all these executive emails and stuff were released? Yeah. It was revealed that the head of the studio, Amy something, she was in talks with Paul Feig and others. They were really trying to box Ivan Reitman out of it. They really didn't want him involved, and he wanted very much to be involved. And I think he thought he could get a sequel off the ground, like a proper sequel, not a reboot. And they were like, we got to keep this guy away from it. We want to do fresh blood. And then I remember they said they established like Ghost Corps, which it must still exist because the logo came before this movie, which was, it was a subsidiary of Sony that was tasked with franchising Ghostbusters. They had announced an animated film starring Slimer. They had announced a 21 Jump Street style Channing Tatum Ghostbusters. There were other projects in the pipeline too. Dan Aykroyd, I think, was like consulted, but every time he was interviewed about it, he sounded like he was in some kind of drugged haze. Like he was having like dreams about being consulted, but wasn't actually being consulted. I mean, he has really lost the fucking thread, that guy.
He's bizarre. Like I think I saw an interview with him. Maybe he was on like Joe Rogan or something, and he's almost incomprehensible.
He was so funny. But remember that Christmas sketch on SNL where he's talking about the dangerous toys? He's like, look at this. Look what you can do with this rusty nail. You can play with it. and Blues Brothers is incredible. Yeah. But I guess, look, age comes for us all.
Yeah, that's true.
So then we come to 2021's Ghostbusters. And I remember when the trailer first hit, where it was like, actually, it's an indie dramedy. And I was like, well,
yeah,
that's
it does the slow piano and
dong, minor chord. But the thing that had me thrilled about it truly was that they hired Jason Reitman. Look, lately he's having like a real Shyamalan turn in his career where he can't make a good movie anymore. All of a sudden, it's almost like dementia or something. Like it makes me fear for myself. Where I'm like, sometimes people who make amazing movies turn a corner and can't make a good movie. All of a sudden, it's like they lost touch with humanity and can't like tell a story anymore. But he's had some duds, starting with this movie called Labor Day with Josh Brolin and Kate Winslet, like an incredible star talent, but a bizarre and fucked up movie. But he did young adult, brilliant.
Up in the Air, brilliant.
Juno, very much a product of his time, but I think that Juno is a really strong movie. Like,
I liked that at the time.
2007. Thank You for Smoking, which is very, very genius. So it's like, hey, this is really cool. Like Ivan Reitman got boxed out of the 2016 one. Now I guess he was on set the whole time. Basically, he was kind of it was a very collaborative. It was like a Reitman experience. So I was like, all right, indie dramedy, not the first thing I would consider when rebooting Ghostbusters, or when revitalizing Ghostbusters. But if the Reitman family wants to come back and they think this is the way to approach it, and that they found a way back into the story, because I knew that it was going to be Egon's lineage, and Harold Ramis being dead is the biggest problem with the premise of doing a sequel. It's probably why they wanted to reboot or whatever. I was like, I was down for it. I really was. And I walked into that, and I had seen people who I knew were bigger Ghostbusters fans than me come out of the movie going like, oh, they nailed it. I can't believe I just saw Ghostbusters 3. Like I've seen some people gush about this thing.
I haven't seen any feedback from anybody except when your feedback, what I saw.
Yeah, I marched like you. I marched to the theater and I sat down and I watched this thing. Yeah. And I'll let you go. So you saw it with people. I saw it by myself with a whole empty row.
Yeah, I saw it with my sister begged me to go, and I was kind of I didn't really want to go to the theaters to see it, but I'd rather see the Eternals, which I haven't seen yet. But
yeah.
So I went. I was like, well, I have to be social and do a thing.
Going to a movie is not the worst thing you could do.
And so we went, and it's I would say the first 2/3 I was in with it. Like I think it's not strictly a comedy, that's for sure. No. It's like it is more like a dramedy, and it's more like taking the things about Ghostbusters very seriously, which is, it feels weird that like to I don't know, have such reverence for these things that were almost throwaways. Like like the proton pack, like those were like invented off screen. And it was just like a joke. It's like, oh, it's a nuclear accelerator on your back, and they turn it on in the elevator and they like back away from it. It was just a joke. It was a gag they threw in there.
But you're right. Nice cinematography, nice sound design, nice production design. I think pretty good casting. I think the girl who plays Egon's granddaughter
is really good.
Yeah, really interesting screen presence. The movie had integrity. No, but it had something that the 2016 one very much did not have, which was a sense of confidence, a sense of its own identity. And I still don't think those first 2/3 are particularly strong. I think that, like, as far as character motivations, an emotional arc, like plot scenarios that make sense or could be strong, like I still don't think that it's particularly strong stuff, but it's not, it at least had a sense of itself.
It didn't completely nail anything, and I could have done with a lot less of the member berry stuff, the clear references that felt like out of place, and some of them like I called, like there was like, I don't know, like I had a good vision of like, oh, they're gonna have like a stack of books here. Oh, there they are. It's like, I don't know. It was just like you started to like know when they were gonna reference, and they referenced Ghostbusters 1 a lot, but not Ghostbusters 2. It's almost like it didn't exist.
Yeah, which I find annoying. At least give me one Vigo the Carpathian reference.
Yeah. I guess like Ray is in his bookshop, but that's about it.
Well, that's a good point. It actually reminds me a lot of Rocky V references in future Rocky films, where they do it, but not a lot. Yeah. But two things in the first 2/3 that bugged me very much, where I was like, okay, you're going to have to do better than that. One is just the primary decision to go with Gozer.
Yes.
I mean, like, really, you're just this. It's not just because that was the villain of the first movie doesn't make it like the big bad of the franchise if you're going to franchise it, right?
Yeah, it makes it feel very small. Like, you think there would be at least ghost situations everywhere, or like major ghost events everywhere.
Yeah,
it doesn't
especially
have to
if your whole thing is like it's going to be ghosts. Vigo the Carpathian and Gozer are two like cult gods of history. Give me another one. You can make it even kind of similar, okay? Like you can theme this, but don't just do it again. Don't just be, it reminds me of like Indiana Jones 4, when like suddenly Marion was the girl in it again. And I was like, so we're just, like, because Raiders is the most popular one, we're going to bring back as much Raiders stuff as possible, right? There's two other movies. You know, I don't know. I hate it when when these revitalizations go back to the one that struck gold the most. Like, build on your whole thing. Anyway. So that was my first eye roll, and it's a pretty big eye roll.
Yeah, when I saw like the Shandor mines, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And the second one is actually much more significant, where I'm like, what are you doing? Like, did you guys not, hey, Ivan, were you not part of this at some point in your life? Did you not direct this movie? Ray Stantz being like, fuck Egon Stangler, and then being like, no, he started going crazy talking about ghosts and stuff. I don't know. And for that reason, I abandoned him. I'm like, what? Maybe you could have given me a Venkman scene where Venkman's like, those guys got too spooky on me, and I walked. Maybe. But no, not even him. They're all Ghostbusters. They're all kooks. The whole thing is that they're the outsider. So to be like, there was infighting where of all of the two characters, Ray and Egon, the ones that were always like breathing each other's fumes.
Yeah, if Egon was like, hey, I think the end of the world's happening, Ray would be there in a second.
Nothing is more obvious to me than that. Like, this is not something I'm reading into the movie. Like, we all know this, do we not? So to write a scene where, and I get it, the vodka alien 9/11 man is crazy. You could give him some dialogue that makes sense, couldn't you? Especially if he's just going to sit there on the phone blabbing about the plot that for a movie that I'd rather see, which is very Force Awakens-ish, by the way.
Yeah.
Where like everybody's just aged out. So you have to tell a story that's like 50 years into the future, or like, I would have liked to have gotten a story in between time, if anything.
Yeah, they needed a sequel in the 90s, that's for sure.
But you blew it. You fucking blew it. Just like you blew Star Wars sequels. I'll say this. The fan service is one of these like very sensitive issues where I feel like audiences want their member berries, and they want them now. That's what makes money, clearly. And yet they want their member berries served classily. they don't want to, they don't want characters popping up saying old lines too much. So that's like the balance that we're all supposed to walk. So I think it's goofy to rag on movies too much for fan service stuff when it's like, that's why this even exists in the first place. It ought not to exist otherwise. But obviously I accept that there's a way to integrate it and there's a way not to integrate it. There's doing it cosmetically and there's doing it organic to the story and building a story. And I actually thought the "who you gonna call" line was fairly well integrated into the script.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy the member berries, because there were some that I did enjoy, and it just seemed it seemed a little too exploitive, and I felt like the story was strong enough without them. Well, strong enough in the like first 2/3, minus when they get to the phone call with Ray.
So bad.
And then the last third, I think, is just a travesty.
It all falls apart completely. Yeah, if you were able to enjoy the film on some level up to that point, how it is you get through that cornfield scene, the CG cornfield scene, with 150-year-old actors, with the exception of Winston, of course, who looks like he's about 51.
Yeah. He looked the most energetic and into it out of all of them.
Imagine him Ernie Hudson standing next to these fossils. Like, I'm the only one here who looks good. I did. So spoilers, by the way. I guess we should have said that at the top. But yeah, they spend the whole movie feeding you different characters, giving you the same old villain, but there's really nothing about the original team that outside of Egon that's tied into this thing.
Yeah, they
a horrible scene with Ray. That's it.
Yeah, and they show up out of nowhere, like for no reason. other
Yeah,
than to
like
just be there.
I assume that they weren't green screened in, but it felt like they were. It felt like it really just gives me Rise of Skywalker flashbacks where like it reminds me of that last scene where she fights Palpatine and that's when you're supposed to have all the cameos, and that's when you're supposed to just, you know, and the studio's like, you know, I guess you better do the original team. And I'll tell you, as I was watching the movie, and I guess I was pretty bored through a lot of it. I was like, even through like the stuff that was good, I was kind of like, all right, is there a movie here? Anybody? Is there like, am I following anything? I remember thinking, I was like, you know, would it have killed anybody to just make a movie about the original team? Because that's all there is to Ghostbusters anyway. Would it have killed anybody to, you know, I know there's no...
Make an indie movie about a bunch of sad old Ghostbusters mourning the death of their friend.
That's what I thought until they showed up.
That's true.
And then I was like, yeah, this isn't workable. This is, you know, Bill Murray included. Bill Murray looks like a fucking cobweb.
Yeah, and all of his lines feel like so strained, like he was reading them at gunpoint.
And I remember there was some press beforehand that was like, when you see Bill Murray, you're gonna feel it, man. Venkman is back, and I didn't know how much I missed it, and blah blah blah. And it reminds me very much of Harrison Ford as Han Solo or Indiana Jones, where, you know, he had such charisma in his prime, and now it's just a different guy. It's just some other grandpa. It's just not the same thing. It just can't be the same thing, unfortunately. But yeah, they show up, they take a big old shit all over whatever plot there had been up to that point. Gozer is there. She goes, "Are you a god?" And they make a joke about Rey, and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man doesn't. I mean, there's little teeny ones in Walmart, but
yeah, that Walmart scene's something else.
It's not as though
Baskin Robbins.
It's not as though something big in a city happened. It's in this kind of clear studio set cornfield. There's then a CG Harold Ramis, which Redler Media pointed this out. I agree. The CG on him was, you know, of all of the bring an actor back from the dead CGs that we've seen in recent years, it was the best one, probably.
Yeah, it helped that he was like a weird ghost, but
yeah, he didn't speak. He was a ghost, so you could kind of make him more translucent. But one thing that struck me was, if you saw Harold Ramis in any movies, like before he died,
he was way fatter,
very fat, and they decided to go with like a more picturesque, future version of Egon.
Yeah, they took like how he looked and just like gave him like a beard and like made him look, I don't know, sort of older. Like if you put old age makeup on him at that point. Yeah,
exactly. It looks pretty good, and it's pretty believable, and it's helpful that he doesn't speak, I suppose. But the whole thing just falls to bits, where you're just like, what am I watching? What am I invested in?
They do the whole last act is like they do the keymaster and the gatekeeper or whatever, and they do.
And Paul Rudd's got sticky uppy hair, just like Rick Moranis, but there's no Rick Moranis.
They do like the temple scene for some reason. It's just like it's the same stuff, one after another, and then it's that cornfield scene. It's like it felt a lot like it was like Force Awakens with Rise of Skywalker mashed together.
Yeah. People have compared it to Force Awakens most of all because of the member berries, but I think you need to hearken a little bit of Rise of Skywalker too, because Force Awakens by itself at the time was tolerable. It was like pretty acceptable. It was like, yeah, I know what this is, but I'm kind of liking being back in Star Wars land. But this is not that. This is like somehow Gozer has returned.
Yeah. And the editing reminded me of, especially toward the end, it started becoming more Rise of Skywalker-y, like quick edits. Boom, 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 boom. Thing, keymaster, like boom, boom. And it just kept going. Like, and that reminded me of how my brain felt in Rise of Skywalker, where I couldn't even process anything.
Or like the original cut of Justice League. It does feel at some point these things seem to collapse under their own weight, and then the studio kind of picks at the corpse and tries to give you something that feels packaged. And yeah, it tends to come in the last act too. And is it just me, or is like, do we make entire movies just for the post credit scenes now?
Oh, like, yeah.
just to tease future movies, just to make you excited about the concept of the film. There were two in this case. One was Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver in a fairly awkward little reverse shot scene. I'll say this: Sigourney Weaver looks a whole lot better than Bill Murray.
Oh yeah, she like articulates better too.
yeah, totally. He sounds like his throat gave out.
Yeah.
And then there was one that was particularly odd, but I thought hinted at more plot and more story than the rest of the film, which is like that Winston had become this kind of like mogul, and he like sort of credits everything back to like his days as a Ghostbuster, and that he is bankrolling Ray's bookshop. And there's something about that. It was like, I would almost, if you could somehow do a Where Are They Now 30 minutes, even with these ancient actors for streaming kind of, that would probably be the better way to go. Like, I still got to ask you, why don't they make shorter, lower budget sort of event films for streaming platforms now?
Yeah, I don't know. I think they should do. I would love to see Peter Venkman like day in the life as an elderly professor.
Yeah, something
and that's
like that.
it.
Yeah, you don't need to put him in a janitor costume at any point.
I wouldn't put him in a janitor costume. He's just like day-to-day life, like how he like grades his students.
There's a lot wrong with that movie. I think we've recapped it fairly well. But like I was, if I had to boil it down, it would be like, to not have seen Venkman at any point in the film, and then you see him in his costume, is really fucking stupid.
Yeah.
You like, I need to see him not in his costume in a scene or two, and then I can see him in his costume. Or I need something that says he's hesitant, he doesn't want to, just like the real Bill Murray. You have to, he doesn't have a voicemail set up on his cell phone, and he doesn't have an agent, or whatever the fuck the story is. He doesn't, you got to set him up if he's going to be, he is literally the climax of the film. And I don't know who he is, as it relates to this story. I'm supposed, like, some YouTube commercials are supposed to catch me up.
Yeah, maybe they just didn't want to bother. I don't even know.
It's very poor. And I think I'm really upset that the guy who made Up in the Air and his dad, the guy who made Ghostbusters, maybe there's a story behind it.
Because even if it was just like Super 8 but with Ghostbusters, I think I'd be like Ghostbusters tech underlying it. I think I'd be fine with that. But the fact that they jammed all that stuff in at the end really put a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I would have been fine with it. I would have been like B-. Yeah. And I still would have walked out going, okay, I guess he can't really do Ghostbusters. Like, it's, well, the Ecto-1 stuff was cool for sure. It was just, again, those are nicely shot scenes. They're nicely edited. The Ecto-1 looks amazing. It's horny for its own property, which is good. It should be, the movie should be a fan of itself.
I did like the weight of a lot of the tech. I loved, they were very good with that. Like the 2016 Ghostbusters, it felt too like floaty and like weird. And I just love that like industrial feel of that tech, and they make it heavy. And I love when the actress like puts on the proton pack. It's huge. It's rough. There's some good visuals in it. They do some fun things with it, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's very unsatisfying.
When I asked Nina, I was like, what do you think the movie's about? Because I thought she had seen the trailer. So I thought she was going to be like, oh, that's Egon's family, right? And Gozer comes back, and at the end, the old crew has to hang with the new crew and beat it. I thought she was going to say that because that's pretty predictable, and that's what happened in the movie. That's what makes like this whole like sensitivity to spoilers feels like such a mockery to me. Like, what are you sensitive about? But she didn't know any of that. So instead, she was like, I was like, well, it's about Egon's like grandkids, and she goes, oh, that they have to become Ghostbusters. It was like the family's poor, so they have to become Ghostbusters. That's like right where she went, and which is where RLM went as well, actually.
Oh yeah. I like that take.
And I was like, oh yeah, that is like somewhat obvious. Like because that is a little bit more thematic with the original, which was like, we're going into this huckster profession.
We have a brand to sell. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, why wouldn't you have done that? And then you could make the kids a little older, so it's not child Ghostbusters.
Yeah, but they went like the schmaltzy, like Steven Spielberg-y way. Yeah.
For some reason, yeah. Like that's the pitch. And I think probably what happened was after 2016, Sony was like, whatever you want. We don't know. We clearly don't know.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.